Well, welcome back to Gopher's Workshop. I'm your host, Aaron, and joining me, as always, is my fellow host, Creels.
Hello.
And Sky.
Hi there.
Oh, that was so chipper. Look at you, Chris. We're rubbing off on you finally. Right. Today, we have a laundry list of things to talk about, but I think we'll start with the new detachments. Chris, you want to take us home?
Not to my home. All right. So just last week or this week, depending on when you're listening to it, we got 3 new detachments. They promised that they would give us a few new detachments each quarter. And after the kerfuffle that was DACA detachment, I was a little worried they might not keep doing that. But good news, they are. Bad news, these seem way more reasonable. So, again, getting away from DACA detachment, because again, like there's a whole lot of overreaction. But we got 3 new detachments, 1 for Chaos Space Marines, 1's for Tyranids, and 1 for Dark Angels. Overall, these are all pretty decent. I don't know that these necessarily fully replace your other options, but they are really good alternatives. We'll start with Tyranids. On its face, basically, there's a couple of units, Molochs and Trigons, that gain the burrow keyword, and it gives them some really sweet abilities. For starters, all Tyranids in this detachment get to reroll 1s to hit. That's just all the time. In itself, pretty great. In addition, the burrow keyword allows you to place a little tunnel token. Units that come in from reserves or reinforcements, I should say, using those tunnel tokens can come in wholly within 9 of the token and more than 6 away from enemy units. This is very similar to how Death Guard are working, because when you do this, there isn't a restriction of, but if you do this, you can't charge afterwards or things like that. So this could be very powerful in certain scenarios. I will admit that Molochs and Trigons aren't really that strong, but the ability to just deliver a unit 6 inches away and guarantee its charge is probably worth the tax of the Moloch or Trigon. There are some pretty neat strats in here as well. Obviously, you get your own enhancements, things like that. But I think the strats are pretty neat overall. Again, you have access to many other detachments for Tyranids. I don't know that this is so powerful. It just negates the others. Depending on your build, there are many options still. But I think this is really solid. The reroll 1s to hit all the time, whether you're doing shooting or melee, is going to be solid. The fact that you can kind of sneak some things in order to guarantee a charge, pretty amazing. In addition to this, it's probably worth noting that they also introduced a new unit for Tyranids. It's a version of Raveners that has like a Psyker guy and things like that. I know we had talked about that in a previous episode, but this kind of all goes hand in hand. This is definitely a big boon to Tyranids.
The new unit is so good.
It looks good. It is good. It's pretty great. And then again, having it do a 6-inch deep strike and guarantee the charge, it sounds awesome to me.
Even if they're not the scariest melee unit, guaranteed delivery is pretty good.
Yes. And
I would argue more important.
Correct. They are not the scariest melee unit that Tyranids have access to. They have some decent shooting because they got like the Psyker guy and the poison, whatever, but they also are good in melee. They're honestly just a good, well-rounded unit that is better than Raveners, because even if we said they're the exact same as far as melee is concerned, the fact that they gained like a psychic attack and a cool ability, they're just kind of objectively better. Now, they are different in points, so obviously there's like trade-offs there, but overall, it's really solid. I think regardless of that unit, this new detachment is going to allow you to do some interesting tricks. The fact that you can like bring a full brick of Hormagaunts and just tie everything up with reroll ones to hit. So any sort of chaff unit probably gets mulched. Instead, you could bring in something way scarier and just like charge them with a big scary brick of regular Raveners and then probably mulch the thing it touches. You have access to a bunch of options here. It's very solid. It does require a lot of board control though, and screening and things like that. So this is part of the reason why I say it is powerful, but it takes a certain skill set to get the full value out of it. Okay, moving on. Next one is Chaos Space Marines. So for this one, each time a unit in your army does the Dark Pact, it chooses one of the following abilities that it gets till the end of the phase. I would note here that it doesn't clarify that it's replacing the Dark Pact ability. So unless they say something otherwise, this should be in addition to your normal Dark Pact ability. So the two abilities are, if the unit is within 9 inches of a friendly Heretic Astartes Psyker, you get to improve the strength of the ranged weapons equipped by models in this unit. It's okay. It's not bad. In the instance where this +1 strength effectively nets +1 to wound, you're probably going to choose it and feel pretty happy about it. The other option is, while this unit is within 9 inches of one or more friendly Heretic Astartes Demon Princes or Demon Prince with wings, improve the armor penetration characteristic of melee weapons equipped by models in this unit. This is so good. Love this. Note also that it's in different phases, ranged weapons versus melee weapons, which means if your Demon Prince is a Psyker model and you're within 9, you can Dark Pact shooting, get the bonus strength, charge, Dark Pact melee, get the bonus AP. So you can get both of these, even though it says choose one. They have some really good utility enhancements here that I feel the need to point out. You can just give a Heretic Astartes character model the Psyker keyword, even though he's not a Psyker. It got another one that gives the unit a 6-inch scout. It's, again, this is pretty well rounded. I think this is really solid because that bonus AP is going to feel really powerful, and the bonus strength, let's say half the time isn't relevant, but the other half of the time actually says +1 to wound. Again, very solid. Nothing wrong with this. I don't think this is powerful enough to say whatever detachment you were playing is bad, play this instead. But this does give you some other options. If you're really into Demon Princes, if you're really into, taking some of those extra psychers that maybe other detachments don't give you benefits for, this is a reasonable choice. I don't have any problem with this detachment. It's just not crazy powerful like we would kind of expect out of some of these new detachments recently. All right. And our last one is Dark Angels.
Yeah, this is the one.
You're right. Let's immediately pause and say, you know how I said they were reasonable? Okay, well, maybe. This one is, if built right and played right, which it does have restrictions. It does have like play styles that it benefits over others. I'm not saying this is, holy cow, if you're playing Dark Angels, this is your only option. But it is probably one of your top 3 without question. Okay. This says each time an attack targets one of your Adeptus Astartes infantry or mounted units, only infantry and mounted, the strength characteristic of the attack, if it's greater than your toughness, subtract 1 from the wound roll. This is so powerful if played correctly. Now, again, I will admit that there are like some obvious limitations here. If someone's playing like MSU spam with a bunch of like intercessors, assault intercessors, you basically don't have a detachment rule, right? Because they're all like strength 4 or 5. and you're probably not getting the -1 to wound. So there are reasons why in certain metas, this is not going to look that good. But especially in the North American meta, if you, I ended up playing this list or a list with this detachment the other day against like a Dreadnought spam list. They were playing Ironstorm with a bunch of like really tough things and good quality dice everywhere, las cannons and missiles. And the fact that basically my entire list said -1 to wound almost all the time. And then I took a few other units like Eliminators. So now that unit is -1 to hit and -1 to wound. For as cheap as some of these units are, it is incredible how long they live. I cannot stress enough how good this detachment is. I am going to be playing this for a little bit, at least until we get the official Space Wolf Codex, and then I'm going to playtest that for a little bit. But I think this is incredibly good. Again, points of note, the kind of a crazy enhancement here, especially for I say Deathwing, but for Dark Angels, is a Deathwing model with a Deep Strike ability can take an enhancement that allows it to Deep Strike on turn 1. That's kind of nuts because, again, you're talking about taking Deathwing Knights that are already one of the toughest Terminators in the whole game, giving them a -1 to wound, solidifying that they're the toughest Terminator in the game, and then Deep Striking them on turn 1. If you make the charge in turn 1, boy, howdy, are they really struggling to get you out of their deployment zone. If you don't make the charge in turn 1, you still have the toughest Terminator unit in the game, probably sitting in the midfield on an objective somewhere, and they're really hard to shift. Sounds good. In addition to that, again, the stratagems are really solid. There's one that is 2 CP effectively after the Oath unit you selected dies. You can pick another unit and give it Oath. There are restrictions to that. There has to be a character within 12 of the second unit, and it has to have line of sight. Again, this is like, it's also 2 CP. It is very restrictive, but it is in the situation where you actually spend the CP and use it correctly, it is going to be very powerful. So this detachment, I'm going to say, is kind of nuts. Does it, depending on your build, obviously, does it become the best Dark Angels detachment? No. In certain builds, yes, you can build for this detachment, basically giving away all of your vehicles. And you know what? This is really solid. I love this detachment. It totally fits my playstyle of the elitist, good board control, that sort of thing. But again, it only applies to infantry and mounted. So if you are kind of pushing for some vehicles, like you want to take a Vindicator or a Ballistus, those do not work with this at all. There's no like stratagem. There's no enhancement or detachment rule that really gives you much of a benefit. So you got to build around it, but it's very solid.
I love this one.
Again, I think it's great. It fits my play style very well. I've always preferred a more elitist play style. So I'm going to be playing it for a while. I think it's great.
I think it's a very fun one. Seeing more things get more ways to just redeploy right in front of me, or like right within 6 inches or 9 inches or whatever on turn 1.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just crying. I can't. I still don't have any answers to that. Not real ones.
And see, that's only kind of true, right? Because even in this scenario, it still has counterplay. I'm allowed to deep strike on turn 1, and that's pretty good. But if you play infiltrators and I don't play the infiltrate game, you can absolutely stop me.
I agree. No, there's things. I'm just saying that, like, overall, we're seeing more and more turn 1 redeploy thing, or deep strike thing, or whatever. It seems like a thing that they are liking to sprinkle in to a lot of the new stuff.
Yep.
So I'm just expecting to see more of it as we go forward.
And I think so. I don't know if we want to call it a phase or whatever, but for a while, even in our local play group, there was a lot of discussion and interaction with turn 1 no man's land, whether it was infiltrates or scouts. This whole idea of like, well, I'm going to prevent your deep strike because I'm going to scout out with my grots, or I'm going to prevent your good infiltrate by putting my crappy infiltrate out first. And this is really good interaction and really good fun, I'm going to say, to
I like
interact with this part of the game. But you're right. They're now giving you real benefits instead of like, no, it's interesting. I want to stop the Tyranids from infiltrating out because they have little lone op guys. Well, that was okay before, but now you're like, no, it's more relevant to put it in my list because against not Tyranids, there are so many other factions that have turn one deep strike or, turn one infiltrates or redeploys, things like that, that you're right. It's becoming more relevant. And I think our little experimenting before is going to kind of come back around.
Yeah, I think so too. Commandos are going back in.
Again, at least for this detachment, which is not to say all of them, but for this detachment, scouts work just as well. Yeah, there's multiple ways to interact with several of these things that are coming out, but it's about, which one did you decide to play? Are you positioning them, in the most optimal way? That sort of thing.
Yeah.
All right. In other news and updates, after all these detachments came out, we got the Chaos Knight Codex, which we reviewed last week. Well, in addition to that, we got updates for the Imperial Armor or Forge World Knights, as well as updating the regular Imperial Knights. They're still on index, but they all got a bunch of updates. Almost all of these updates are kind of mirroring what we saw the trends in Chaos Knights were. So they confirmed all the points for Chaos Knights. Almost all of them are exactly what we thought they would be. Your average big knights, 335. Your average war dogs, 140, with some variation there. When it comes to the Forge World Knights, your average knight, Cerastus, is going to be 355. Then there are some of the bigger kind of crazy Acastus Knights. They didn't really change, but all good stuff. As far as the Forge World Knights are concerned, the Acastus, which are the big crazy Forge World Knights that you almost never see, but show up every so often, stayed at toughness 13. Pretty impressive.
Yeah.
But also that's why they didn't go down in points. So fair. But all the Cerastus, those all went down to T11 and went up in wounds to 28 to match the other big knights. But in trade-off for that, they all went down by, let's say, at least 50 points. Depending on which one you're talking about, it varies a little bit. Down by 65, down by 90, and so anywhere in between. This is a giant boon. Arguably for Chaos Knights, we kind of expected this. It's fine. The fact that out of nowhere, the Imperial Knights are going to gain like 3 extra deployments for no reason is nuts. It's so good. With all the points changes, yes, they lost some toughness, but basically they all gained wounds. And this goes for what they call Armigers. Armigers went down to T9, matching War Dogs, went up in wounds to match War Dogs. So this is more, again, the intent and even play amongst Imperium versus Chaos Knights. But for all the points drops they got, I think this is pretty huge. As a matter of fact, for Imperial Knights, I would argue this is even better than for Chaos Knights, because as a reminder, one of the core rules for Imperial Knights is a feel no pain rule. And the more wounds you have, the better feel no pain is. So it's only a 6-up feel no pain, and then once you complete your little deed or whatever, or I think it says you become honored, it goes to a 5-up feel no pain, which that's not likely to happen on turn 1 unless your opponent makes a mistake. It maybe doesn't even happen on turn 2, but by turn 3, you're probably going to get honored, and that's going to feel really good. So I think this is pretty huge for Imperial Knights. Just doing some quick math. Honestly, the War Dogs are arguably worse, right? Like Melta is scarier to them.
Mm-hmm.
However, the the reality is I think there's a lot of kind of durability that they gained, because outside of Melta, I would argue the extra wounds are pretty huge, because like with las cannons, for example, or even plasma, in both scenarios, they're wounding the same, and I just gained more wounds, which means I'm likely to live longer. Like las cannons are you need probably a whole extra las cannon rolling average, or even spike dice. You need an extra las cannon because you can't quite get there in the same number unless you get just crazy lucky. Similar thing for the big knights. Again, we go down a toughness, and if we're talking about specifically las cannons, you're right. Las cannons gain a +1 to wound against big knights, but also we gained more wounds. And gaining more wounds means you need more total dice. Well, it's hard to get a volume of dice on las cannons. So
I think it makes a bigger difference for certain melee units into the knights.
Sure does.
Arguably, like, I mean, obviously with orcs, there's the variable strength because of the WA, and there's a couple other sources that you could possibly get in wonky places, but going from like 8 to 9 or 9 to 10 on my strength into those things, well, now that they're closer, it actually can do something to make some kind of wound roll difference. You're not talking about stuff with anti, obviously, but like just boys or war bosses or whatever.
Yeah. And when you're talking about melee, the number of things that have like strength 5 melee, so we're talking blade guard, we're talking like a bunch of things, right? The fact that they get to wound better against war dogs, very relevant, super good. T11, on the other hand, like strength 6 gets a +1 to wound against the T11, but that seems way less like often that's going to show up. Still relevant though.
I also think that this is a pretty clever change to bring knights in general like closer to the rest of the stat blocks of 40K the game, so they're more interactable, like in both ways. But
correct. One of the things I was talking about earlier this week that I kind of came to the realization of and thought was nuts is with all these points reductions, not only do Knights players get to basically get free upgrades, right? Like on most Knight lists, they basically got to convert a War Dog into a big Knight because they got so many free points. Well, that's pretty cool, right? But there's so many lists that were playing like already playing 3 or 4 big Knights that just got a couple of free War Dogs, things like that. What this net ends up doing is your average Knight player is probably playing closer to 10 units or 10 deployments than they were before. And your average list, not all, your average list is running about 10 deployments. After putting things into reserves and transports, etc., they're running about 10 drops. That's your average list. If Knights are averaging 10 drops, that's actually crazy, because that means they out-deploy everyone. Because every time they put down a big Knight, your opponent has to put down 2. So this means like if I'm playing a list with, 3 big Knights and 7 little Knights, I've got 10 drops. But I actually have 13 drops. So my opponent, who's like playing 11 or 12, is like, I took a couple of cheap units of Grotz or, a Locust Destroyer, something like that to like get my numbers up. Well, you're still out deploying them unless they brought a bunch of those little units. This is kind of crazy. I'm not mad about it. I'm not saying this is too powerful, but I am saying this is a thing that I think most people who have gotten some playtesting it against Knights previously need to retest against them, because this seems minor, is a giant change competitively. Not being able to counter deploy as well as you used to be able to, on top of them having extra units as a whole, is a giant change for them.
Well, not to mention more wounds, less toughness. That's a change.
Yep. And that, again, for certain units like Blade Guard, like Meltas, the Eradicator, stuff like that, right? They gained a benefit here, which sounds good. That being said, some of your like dedicated tank busters, whether we're talking Vindicators or like Centurions, things like that, that have these like, no, but I've got a bunch of las cannons that are super good. Well, effectively, they got nerfed because they're just as good as they were before, except for they have more wounds to chew through.
Mm-hmm.
So like, yes, they got nerfed in some ways, but they got buffed in others. And now we net to it's different tools for different jobs.
Yeah.
As far as like what's a better counter to knights.
Now it's almost better to have the volume of dice versus the quality of dice in certain circumstances.
You're right. In certain circumstances, right? Because like, again, Melta is objectively better against war dogs. But what if, you know, the knight player decides they're going to play 4 big knights and 4 little knights? Well, now the Meltas are a little less relevant. I should have stuck with my las cannons. Again, there's trade-offs, there's counterplay, but overall, I think this is a really interesting change, both for the knight player and for people playing against the knight player, because both of them have new, interesting challenges that they have to deal with.
Yep. Holy crap.
Yep.
This is great news for me. My knight went down by 65 points.
That's
almost another suppressor unit.
Yeah. See, and whether we're talking about like, you had 5 floating points or whatever, like you could just add a scout unit just because you felt like it, right? Like, is that something you needed? I don't know. But also for like the trade-offs of, oh, but I lost toughness, I guess I'll gain a whole unit. Man, it's really hard to complain about that.
Yeah.
Right? Like, would you be willing to trade a whole scout unit in order to like add 1 toughness to something? Well, if it was like a break point of like 12 to 13, maybe, but that's because you like turn off all the las cannons, right? But from like 11 to 12, probably not. I'd rather have the unit. So like even your list where you're playing a single knight allied into Marines, you're still pretty happy with all the changes, knowing that there's like a minor difference as to las cannons are scarier to my big knight, but also everything else like Meltas and, you know, autocannons, all that stuff that had decent strength is still just as bad. So like now you can, you know, use cover, you can counter deploy, you can prioritize targets to where this is a net benefit for you, but also your opponent acknowledges that they get a net benefit of like, no, but my las cannons are a greater threat now. So
which
like
arguably I was already using cover and stuff. So to me, to a player like me, this change means literally free unit.
Sure, you say that, but again, you're going to end up going against someone who's running a bunch of ballistas and centurions that are like spamming las cannons, and all of a sudden you're going to be like, man, I feel way more scared than I used to. So
you're right, and it has happened when there's a substantial amount of las cannons on the field. I've already been scared because they're wounding me on 4s instead of 5s.
Yep, but now
and
it's
they had
3s.
a +1 to wound, and now it's 3s, and then now it'll be on 2s because of the +1. Don't get me wrong, it's scary, but still, I took that knight into cover every chance I get, so it's not as scary as it could be.
You're right, but that's relying on you, the player, to find the answer to this counterplay. It is not. No, but do you know how tough knights are? Just send it. It's fine. Like that used to be how they played. And I'm not saying it was like good, but that was kind of the mentality, right? Of like, they're so big, they're hard to hide. Nah, they're tough enough. Just send them. And if it doesn't work out, then knights are bad. And that was kind of the idea. Well, now I'm not, this is like, again, I'm not saying everyone felt this way. This is not actually how it should have been, but this is how many people on the internet kind of viewed it. Is like, no, they're supposed to be the toughest thing in the game. Just full send. And if it doesn't work, knights need help. Now they are clearly indicating to us of like, no, they're not the toughest thing in the game. You need to make smarter choices. And assuming it's put into the hands of players who make smarter choices, this is going to feel really basically like a buff across the board. No questions asked. For the players who aren't as good, They're going to like, no, I have more units. It's technically a buff, but they're going to be like forced to acknowledge I need to adjust my play.
Yep. I want to say before we go to the mid break, you saying this, I want to remind everyone that we also said this about 3 other codexes that we've reviewed recently. The game has changed. It is not a full send type of game style anymore. This is a very killy and a very strategic style that we are moving into for the meta.
Yep.
If these point changes and these rules changes haven't made you realize that yet, I feel like the Knight points updates and their rules updates is the thing that's going to send everybody to, oh no, I have to realize now I have to learn how to use cover. I have to effectively learn how to move my units. What units can actively do better in fights than others? Mm-hmm. Now is the time to use strategy. That's where all of this meta is headed.
And DACA detachment is another example. Well, it's not another example. It is a point of proof, I'm going to argue, of people never saw orcs as a shooting threat. So when they played against them, they didn't use cover effectively. And that's part of the reason that DACA detachment was seen as so powerful. It's not because it was actually crazy broken. It's because your average casual player was going up against orcs and standing out in the open because it's orc shooting. Who cares? And because it was an actual shooting detachment, they would get blown off the board turn 1 and then say, they're crazy. This is totally broken. It wasn't. Like, it objectively wasn't. It was, especially with some of like the codexes coming out now, it is obvious that it was way closer to balanced than it was broken. I'm not saying it didn't need some minor changes, but again, this is a point of proof of like, as we're moving into this more strategic mindset or play style, I think how crazy everyone thought DACA detachment was is proof of how many people need to put extra time into learning positioning.
Well, and that's, to sum it all up, that is exactly what I saw when me and my partner were playing at Adepticon. Everyone treated his orc shooting like it was normal orc shooting. They stood out in the center. They came out. They weren't scared. Oh, half their army's melee, half of it's orc shooting. And this is what led to 90% of our wins, is because they did not meet the threat accordingly.
No. And you're going to see the same thing with Knights. As Knights are all updated, you're going to get some of the Knight players that are like, no, but I'm still tough. And I get more units for free. And they're going to stand out in the open and they're going to get shot up. And they're going to be like, well, I'm glad I had these 2 extra units because otherwise I would have been tabled on turn 3. And then you're going to see other Knight players who are like, man, I know that you technically aren't as tough, but the fact that you got 2 extra units seems impossible to deal with because I can't kill you fast enough. I don't care that you're softer. You're not soft enough.
Yep.
Like, and that's strictly based upon the player running the list, not the data sheets, in my opinion.
Yep. We'll talk more about players later after the break, but are you ready for a mid break?
I tell you what, let's hit one more thing before mid break. In all of these updates, this is a minor thing, I will admit, but because we focus on competitive play and some of these weird niche things that not everybody else covers, one of these, I'm going to argue, stealth updates they did that I ran into is Desperate Escape got updated.
Wait, what?
Ooh.
So, Desperate Escape, I will start right now by saying it doesn't show up that often. But when it does, it can kind of be devastating. Just to like, no, I'm going to have to fall back my Dreadnought in order to do all of these things. And I just accidentally lose my Dreadnought. That's crazy, right? I've done it to Aaron.
Yes, it sucks.
It's hilarious. Anyway, so Desperate Escape got at least one change. I'm going to argue 2, but some people are, I don't know, gaslighting me or something. So I believe in the past, if you were battle shocked, you had a -1 to your roll for Desperate Escape. I can't find that anymore. So some people said that they don't remember that. Some people agree with me that they remember it. I'm not sure if I'm mixing up editions or what happened exactly, but they are two separate rules. Desperate Escape is when you fall back and you either have to move through enemy models without the fly keyword because they like pinned you in, or you will always have to Desperate Escape when you are battle shocked. Okay. So now when you Desperate Escape / fall back, if you have to Desperate Escape, you roll a die for each model in the unit, and for every 1 or a 2, a model is removed. Now, again, I believe there was a thing of if you were battle shocked, there was an additional -1 to this roll in the past. But whether that existed or doesn't exist, the answer is it doesn't exist now. So it's only 1s or 2s. The second thing that changed here is the wording previously slowed the game down a lot. And I'm kind of glad for this change, but it is still powerful. You used to have to roll a die per model, which effectively meant if I've got, let's say, a heavy weapon and a sergeant with a good melee weapon and a character in the unit, and then like 5 other dudes, I would roll all my dice, but I'd have to roll those specialty models separate because they are effectively, I'm rolling a die for that model and a die for that model. And it slowed the game down a lot. But there was a chance when you went to like Desperate Escape, I could lose my sergeant and my sweet melee weapon specifically. Now they changed it to say you get to select what model dies. So I roll, there's 7 guys in the unit. I'm rolling all 7 dice. I don't care who is who. For every 1 or 2, I pick which model died. So now my characters, my sergeants, my heavy weapons, they're all more protected than they used to be. This is technically a buff. And again, if I am correct in remembering that there used to be a -1, that means that in general, Desperate Escape got way less scary. That's not to say it isn't still scary. It objectively is. Again, it removes a whole model. I don't care how many wounds you have. But it is still relevant to say this got changed. All right. Yep. So I think we'll do some mid-breaky stuff and then come back and go over some other silly nonsense.
All right, let's go to our mid-break. Well, here we are, the middle of the episode. You know what we do first?
Thank our friends.
Thank our friends.
I have friends.
We have friends now. So we have to thank our lovely, lovely patrons, starting off with our Guardsman patron, Sergeant Matt. I did it again. Look at that. I'm the best.
No, he's the best.
Oh, yeah, you're right. He's the best. We have to thank our White Shield Guardsman patrons as well, Mitch and Nicodemus. So thank you to our patrons. You support us and we love you for it. And you help us make all of this possible. So thank you. So we've thanked our patrons. We love our listeners. We love all of you. You're amazing. What's next? What's the news? What's the scoops?
We are still in the process as you're listening to this moving. So we're doing some pre-recording. So I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but there were some neat spoilers, I guess we'll say, for the Black Templar coming soon.
Oh, neat. Okay.
That's the word we're using.
Are there any interesting rule spoilers, or is it just the models in book?
Not at the time of this recording. We have like some minor stuff. We know that we're getting an ancient model. We know like what the codex looks like, so we know they're coming soon. As a matter of fact, by the time you're listening to this, it may actually be up for pre-order because again, we're recording a little early because of the move. But rules at this time, I don't have any good like solidified information.
Have we brought up Reddit yet?
Oh, I mean, do we need to?
I mean, I'm just, this Black Templar cover has
yes,
a lot of accusations going on. They're very
love.
So, I mean, you can find out in Warhammer Community, but they basically show the new Black Templars Codex supplement, and the cover of it, it's just like a picture of the book. But it has new art on the front. And the accusation is it's very AI art. We have Shovel Crozius with a chaplain in the back. There's a lot of very questionable things the closer you look. Chris pointed out probably the best one, which is that, what do you call that little shield icon they put on their chest? Little rank thing? It's
yeah,
like a rank thing, right?
Basically. I don't remember.
Well, the Marine Templar guy has his arms up like swinging a hammer or something. You actually can't see the weapon because it's out of frame.
Pretty sure it's a sword because it's Black Templars, Emperor Champion and whatnot.
Like a really long-handled sword?
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. They have like the big, like a great sword thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, this little shield is like right in his armpit. So like as soon as he brings his arm down, it's gonna be a bad time.
He's going to like cut into his arm, which, knowing a little too much about like field medicine, he probably cuts his own artery in his arm and like doesn't even finish the battle.
He's got, there's just a lot of funny details. Also on his right shoulder pad, they have the little Templar cross thing going, but it's like shoved into the corner of the pad, which is not something they would do. Mm-hmm. But so you can see it as it's upside down in this art. There's just a lot of little hints of, and none of this, I feel like they put the one guy in the very foreground with the bob cut to try to just distract us. Everyone's going to see the bob cut and laugh and then just move on.
That's the hope, I think, by them.
I think so. They also have like the little hip shield thing. I'm saying that it definitely says mum on it. That's just my opinion.
For the Emperor mum.
Yeah, they're on crusade because you were talking about their mum, right?
Yeah. It's okay. I mean, they're very British. It's fine.
If you look at like the shoulder pad you were talking about with a little insignia on it, the seal doesn't have any red wax.
Yeah,
there's no red wax to it.
Like it's
totally
also like
that.
upside down, kind of. It's weird.
Yeah,
Yep.
like I get that it should be like billowing in the wind, but
and if you
you
look
should
really,
still see some red wax.
And if you look really close, underneath it, there's 3 lengths of like what would be a red cross on top of the black cross. So if it's AI, it almost looks like the AI is confused whether a red seal goes there or a red cross goes there. And we just kind of got this.
Yep.
I know I'm being like too critical, but that's mostly because I'm not distracted enough by the bob cut. But also one of the things that I keep noticing, I don't know why it sticks out to me, but the far shoulder pad, because the Space Marine super shoulders, I have no problem with them. That's the aesthetic. Okay, cool, I get it. But also this is like I'm seeing the interior of that shoulder pad more than I have ever seen the interior of a shoulder pad ever. And I've put together a lot of models.
Oh yeah.
Like I don't know how his arm got either so small or the shoulder got even wider than normal for no reason.
Yeah. There's just a lot of things that just don't add up here.
If you look at the guy in the foreground, like right behind his hand that's holding the handle of the gun, where the trigger is, what is that? Is it like a leaf? It's not a chain. A chain could like sort of make sense. It's just like between his shoulder armor and the gun on top of his wrist is just like a piece of barbed wire. Like I get that we're being critical, but it's really zoomed in. Why can't I tell what it is?
Yeah.
Like it's a big in your face part of the art.
Yeah, you could argue it's barbed wire or something, right? Like that seems like a Black Templary thing. They chain their weapons to themselves. They're like, religious flogging themselves or some shit. Like, I don't know.
It's probably just partially.
It's still, even if that's the case, I still can't tell that that's what it is. It seems like there's just like a scratch on the art.
Also, the guy swinging the thing, his proportions are okay, even though he's got like a pretty good thunder thigh going, but his head still seems kind of small. And I mostly say that because back in the 9th edition art, the head of the guy in the middle of the art is also small and also like too high up, so that his arms have to have like an extra joint and go down and then back up and then out inside the armor somehow. It's fine. We're just hypercritical nerds, but I'm just saying maybe Black Templars have a problem that we're not mentioning. Their flaw is mild disfiguration.
To be fair, to play devil's advocate here, this very well also, all of this could have been artists' creative freedoms, right? All of these things could have been creative freedoms, like the logo being in the bottom side of the pauldron, the tassel, the seal not having the wax. You know, he could have been like, it's just easier not to draw it. You know, the Crozium shovel in the back, it could have been like, it's in the distance, nobody's going to see it, who cares?
Some of those I totally believe, right? Like the cross in the corner, that sounds like creative freedom. Absolutely.
Yep.
The bob cut absolutely is like the best part of this whole thing. I acknowledge. Even if like we say the creative freedom of like the little shield is like in the armpit. Well, that, all right. You know, it's a little lazy, but let's say that's fair. I don't know that like, the weird scratch on the wrist that I can't tell what it is. The fact that like the Crozius is not like any Crozius we've ever seen. Why is he holding a shovel? I don't know about all that.
That's the Emperor's cereal spoon.
Emperor needs his tricks.
Yep. And you do have a fair point, because like as much as we could argue some of these are creative freedoms, the best argument for creative freedoms is the fact that his little hip says mum. Like you're right, absolutely. That almost seems intentional.
Yeah, I'm totally here for let's just make it silly. That doesn't bother me. It's just I also see that like between the Crozius and then on a chain there's like a little medallion with like an eagle on it, which is not something we normally see. Not the way that it looks here.
Yeah, because it's not.
It's kind of like they made these metal things like blown out to where you can't see the detail of the Crozius and you can't see the detail of this eagle, even though it's in the middle of the picture.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's kind of just vagified.
I pointed out earlier the little like shield shoulder pad accoutrement that he has is like perfectly facing the front, even though the shoulder's like rotated. Like of all the things we could complain about, like there's really obvious ones, and then there's ones that are like, yeah, maybe. I feel like the Terminator's a maybe, but he still has so much wrong with him.
Yeah.
Overall, with this Codex cover, I think I want to give it like a 5 out of 10, but there's a bob cut, so I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. And we have one more thing to dissect, which is their version of a company ancient. And the first thing that is awesome is the helmet.
You're right.
It's just great.
So cool.
Yeah, Castle Crashers is here. They look awesome.
I have heard since we were talking about the internet complaining, I heard some of the internet was complaining about the pose is effectively Emperor's Champion, except for his swords in the other hand. I don't know if that's entirely true, but
it kind of looks like that. I don't know.
I don't know that I'm actually even upset about that, because
so many Space Marines are so many Space Marines are so similar. I'm like, but the shoulders are different. Like you don't really see it much in this picture, but like his shoulder pauldrons have like a different shape going on with them.
And
like,
I love that.
I dig it a lot. Weirdly, they made like the middle part of the flag is not even a flag. It's a sword or a shield. You can swap it out with stuff, I guess. Because, sure, I don't know. Like the shield and the sword wouldn't be more useful like in the hands of somebody, but whatever.
It's now you get to shield bash, but with extended range.
Well, like the sword is on chains, so like if he starts swinging the flag around, the sword is probably going to like swing up and outward even further, to where it's just like a pinwheel thing that he's just like swinging around.
Is this ancient going to be Inspector Gadget? He just has like extendo reach.
Oh man, yeah. Also, they have it going through an orc head, which is thanks for that. We can't forget Armageddon.
I love the fact that they have the Armageddon plate underneath of it too.
Well, they had to remind everybody that they were there, but they, are trying not to remind everybody that they may or may not have won. Like,
yeah,
it wasn't a good fight. It was a fight.
The orcs had fun. I like that it's a different kind of flag. It's not just one sheet, and they have some interesting design going on. I don't know why there's a skull with a third eye in the top, if they think that stuff is evil, but hey, whatever. I don't know.
I mean, they hate psychers, so they're going to use it as the key point on their banner to rally around, I guess.
The one with the shield has a funny thing going on, because there's like a shackle hanging off the bottom of the shield. And we've seen it elsewhere. I'm trying to think of the other ancient, not the regular one, but are they going to shackle something up to this and just drag it around?
Yeah, maybe. It's a little weird because there's a second shackle. If you look at his wrist, he is shackled to the banner. But you're right. There's a second shackle of but that's not meant for him. Why is it there?
That's the buddy shackle for the buddy system. Oh, but from this other shot, you can see the pauldron better.
Yeah.
How it's got that wide rectangle. I really like that a lot.
It looks super good. As much as we joke, this model is awesome. Absolutely love it.
Yeah, I don't think the AI generated this. Also, this guy would be against AI, just to be clear. That's literally...
He would hate it.
He would look at the Codex cover and probably destroy it. It's just too sus. You know what I'm thinking? They don't like psychers, right? I mean, specifically this chapter.
Yes, they hate psychers, and then also they hate kind of all heresy, but mostly psychers.
Yeah, I'm just thinking okay, if we're forced to carry a psyker around, we'll just put his head on the top of this pike. And then if we need another one, we'll just shackle him to that flag. Easy. They probably don't care if he's alive or not.
They do. They specifically care that he's dead. That's what they want.
Oh my God.
I'm just... that totally flies in Black Templar world 100% of the time.
Oh. For all the jokes that, because Space Wolves are sort of came out and are going to come out here soon, both before and after Black Templars, for all the jokes of Space Wolves blaming Magnus, to be very clear, the Black Templars, they blame Magnus over everyone else for the heresy. Yeah. That's part of the reason they hate psychers so much.
Makes sense. Checks out.
Tzeentch and Magnus, no, it's his fault. He was doing some psychic warp nonsense.
So I think, what would you rate this model out of 10?
Honestly, sweet shoulder, sweet helmet, interesting banner compared to all the others. I don't know that I actually have any complaints. As far as an ancient goes, if we kind of narrow down our focus, 10 out of 10. Love him. Obviously, he's an ancient, so most of the others are kind of not as cool. Why do I want a stick that gets rid of my gun, that gets rid of my kind of cool ability I could have? Sure, maybe he's not the most spammable, but as far as ancients, he's great.
I think it's a 9 out of 10 because of the random Armageddon reference and the fact that he's wearing 6 different belts at the same time.
I mean, it's pretty cool. You keep your pants up.
What pants?
Also, okay, I know they didn't paint it on this model, but I think that's because his hip is back. One of those belts is to keep the sign up that says, "I'm doing this for Mom."
Oh yeah, where's the mom? Hey, they didn't take a picture of that. By the way, I'm going to have the successor chapter, the Black Templars, and just paint Mum on all of them. Do it for Mum. They don't care about Space Dad. They're here for Space Mum. Anyway, I think this is cool. It has flavor. I want to see more of this and less of like the over smoothed Cody as we got. Yeah. Any other mid-break news?
We do have a sponsor update though.
What?
We have a sponsor.
Hooray!
Hooray! So, Chris.
I didn't do it.
You didn't do it. But you did.
Maybe I did.
You did. We got a new sponsor and you got some goodies from said sponsor, didn't you?
I did. I tested them out.
What are your thoughts from our lovely sponsor, W?
So W is a energy drink kind of supplement sort of thing. They're also a veteran-owned business. We specifically got some of their stuff in order to kind of test it out before we took them on as a sponsor. If we get any sponsors, whether it's now or in the future, we're going to test all their products. We're going to make sure that we like them. We're not promoting something that is just, hey, but they were willing to sponsor us sort of thing. But it's really good stuff. I am a big fan of this stuff only because it's so much better for you than like sodas and regular energy drinks. A few times in my life, I've tried to claim to be healthier, and in doing so, kind of like stopped drinking sodas and things like that. And this gives me the caffeine I require to live, but also is definitely a lot better for me than sodas and things like that. So
yeah, we added this to Chris's habitat, and he was 10% happier on average.
I don't know how those numbers came about, but close enough. No, they have a bunch of different products. If you go to their website, we've got a code that we'll put up, and you can save yourself a little bit of money. But also, again, they have all kinds of products. They have, they actually, one of the things that I tried was they have cross promotions. I don't know what to call it. They're working with Crunchyroll. So some of the like animes and stuff that you watch, they're kind of like got a little theme to the image and things like that. But yeah, no, it's actually really good. Arguably good for you, especially for those of us that require caffeine to get out of bed.
You're right. I think the best part for me is that like if you break down the price, like one tub is equivalent to 30 servings, right? You're paying $1.30 per energy drink. That's like one of the cheapest energy drinks on the market, and it's still arguably way better for you than anything you can get from the store.
It's pretty good stuff.
It's great. So if you want to grab your Dubby, you can use our promo code Gopher Games at checkout and save yourself 10% off. So go do it. Get the thing.
How do you spell that?
DUBBY, or you mean the promo code?
Yeah.
It's Geo 4 and games. There you go. It'll be in the show notes. So on that note, another way you can save some money is you can head on over to our website if you want to support us further, or maybe you're just looking for some really good discounts on some GW stuff. You can head on over to gophermafia.com and save yourself 15% off all GW products. And we do different discounts on different things. So if GW is not your thing, we also do Fallout, and we do Bushido, and we do, you name it. We've got a bunch of tabletop games. Go check it out. Link will also be in the show notes. So there you go. There's our news. That's our info for the day. You ready to get to the end of the episode?
Sure am.
Woohoo! All right, let's get to the end of the episode. Here we are. It's the last part of the episode. I think we're going to kick this off with we're going to do some discussing for the last part of this episode. We're going to discuss some things, all right? And the first thing we're going to discuss is we got a comment on our YouTube. You ready? It's not a bad one, so you don't have to cry, Chris. It's not bad.
No, we've gotten a few comments across a bunch of our videos and podcasts. But again, we always appreciate the like, hey, good job, and even when you disagree with us, we appreciate the feedback. But every so often, there's a few that are kind of more, I don't know, discussion provoking, we'll say.
Yes. And this is one of those. So this one comes to us from Burrowboy13, and it says, kind of an inverse take to all the 40K channels. And this is on our Space Wolves video we just dropped. So the data sheets are strong points, detachments are bad. There's definitely competitive play with Wolves. It's pretty much revolves around Gladius, Bjorn, Logan, plus 5 TDA, and 3x3 TWC. After that, you can either spam Hammer Wolfen or tanks and layer in Space Marine utility pieces for mission play. So, Chris, we had a discussion about this off recording, and yes. I felt like it was needed to be put into recording because this comment provoked a huge discussion from us. So I'm going to let you take it from here.
Sure. And let me start by saying I mostly agree with you. The data sheets that are in Space Wolves, while many of them are arguably worse than Index, a lot of that is because they lost utility from like the different characters that could be put in there, because they lost, 6 different character options. And now they're down to, but only the epic character that is also a Space Wolf, right? So despite this, there are a lot of very strong data sheets in this. I absolutely love Blood Claws. Arguably, Thunder Cav are still reasonable durability, even though they lost a ton of damage output. What's his face? Ragnar is absolutely an awesome model, not just the way he looks, but also his rules. Bjorn is a great choice. You're correct. Most of the reason I was kind of poo-pooing on the whole supplement is because it wasn't a supplement. I was trying to really hammer home this is kind of a standalone codex, because the detachments are so specific, because the characters are so limited as to what they can go into. The regular data sheets are so limited as to what characters can be taken by them, compared to what we saw not only in our index, but also in every other supplement. The fact that almost all of our codex has as many restrictions as like Death Company have. Not Blood Angels, Death Company specifically. Mm-hmm. The character restrictions are crazy. And then on top of that, we're talking about like we have Wolfen, which are effectively Death Company, that have the like OC restrictions as well. It is just incredibly restrictive. And to your point, again, I agree with you. There are a couple, like 2 detachments that I think are very playable with Space Wolves, but they're not in the Space Wolf supplement. They're in the generic Marine Codex. And only then does the fact that while we still have a bunch of restrictions on characters, at least our whole list gets the detachment benefit now, instead of like, maybe the whole list gets it after I do a thing on like turn 3 or 4. Ooh, like, I am very critical of the Space Wolf Codex, because to me, it's a standalone codex that allows you to ally in Marines, or you play a Marine list where you're allying in a couple of units of Space Wolves. It is not a supplement as far as I'm concerned.
No, and
that's my main complaint. They are competitive, or they can be. I shouldn't say they are. They can be competitive if you're willing to put in the effort and accept these restrictions. They are very powerful data sheets for those specific units when compared to others. That doesn't mean that they're not hemmed into being restrictive, being non-flexible. Again, if we're talking about like basic intercessors, they have so many options. I could take a 5-man and just be a good utility piece for objectives, for actions. I can take a 10-man brick and they have reasonable damage output. I have options for like 8+ different characters that can go in a regular intercessor squad. And depending on the character I put in, changes how they interact with my like strategy. The ability to give them a 4 binball from a librarian and make them a tough, durable, objective holding high OC unit, versus taking certain characters that give them bonus damage, whether it's lethal hits from a lieutenant, whether it's +1 to wound in melee, even though they're bad at melee, you can make them more versatile that way. Again, having all these options and then going to Space Wolves where they're supposed to be arguably equivalent, though different units, and they have no options. It is you do this thing or you don't play them because they're not good enough. You should be playing the generic Marine stuff. That feels so bad.
Well, this provoked a lot of discussion between us because it's not just the fact that you're like, I have to, if I want to be an effective competitive player with my favorite army, I now have to use a thing that is not in my codex. But it's also, you get punished for using that thing because your Oath of Moment doesn't get the +1 to wound. Because
Correct.
you're specifically named because of it. So you're punished even when you go to a new detachment, you're still getting the extra punishment. Whereas
if we're talking about other factions that also get this restriction, there's an argument to a lot of them that's justified, right? I'm playing Dark Angels and I've got some crazy Terminators and crazy bikes.
Absolutely.
They're the best bikes in the game. You know what? Fair. You are getting crazy data sheets. That's why. Space Wolves, there's an argument to we have some crazy data sheets. But I'm going to tell you right now, by the time that you're obligated to play Gladius, just like, this commenter said, so you're obligated to play Gladius so that at least your non-Space Wolf units get any sort of benefit. And then you're splashing in what Bjorn does not make up for an army-wide +1 to wound.
Yeah.
Right? So you have to take enough Space Wolf crazy data sheets to justify not getting the +1 to wound. But the more Space Wolf data sheets you take, the more the restriction becomes obvious and evident, and you feel that restriction. I don't understand why we got restricted on every end.
Yep. Well, and you briefly mentioned it, the whole Death Company thing, right?
Yep.
Blood Angels, okay, I have some restrictions, right? I can only take, with my Sanguinary Guard, I can only take effectively jump pack leaders. Okay, that's a restriction, but that's arguably a restriction that all jump pack units have.
Correct.
Okay, now we go into my Death Company. And the reason we compare so heavily the Space Wolf Codex as a whole to just the Death Company is, simply put, the Death Company can only take Death Company named characters in that unit. The Death Company Captain, the Lamartes, Asterath the Grim, and Chaplain, right? So they can take a Chaplain, but that's pretty much it. They can't take anything else, but still more than you can take as a Space Wolf.
Correct. You have a generic character that technically you are allowed to take. I have 0. Not again, there are data sheets where they say, oh, you could take a Psyker. I mean, not really. You can take Nigel.
Yep.
You can take Nigel, but only the named one that is a Space Wolf. So you're saying I can put a librarian in this unit? No, but I can. Okay, well, let's say that's weird and special because he's the one allowing you to do that. Normally, a librarian couldn't go in here.
Yeah,
except for their assault intercessors. So yes, they definitely could.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's the argument of the huge restriction on you, right? That would be no different than as a Blood Angels player being told, right, you can take the Sanguinary Guard, but you can only take Dante to lead them. But right here it says any jump pack leader can lead them. Yeah, you're right. But also any jump pack leader, I have an added bonus that any jump pack leader leads them. I get a -1 to wound. Well, the only jump pack leader you're allowed to take is Dante. Okay. Wow. What?
Yep. And this is where, again, I am arguing a level of unfairness, not because we have these restrictions, but because there's such an easy direct comparison to no, but if Blood Angels were super restrictive like this, you know what? We're in the same boat. I get it. Now we get to collectively argue that the not getting the +1 to wound seems unfair because look how restrictive our data sheets already are.
Yep.
Right. But when we get when we don't get the +1 to wound on Oath, and you as a Blood Angels player, get next to no restrictions. You get some, I will totally admit.
Yep.
But compared to Space Wolves, the argument is you get next to no restrictions.
Yep.
Why do you get why do I get the not +1 to wound, even though I'm so much more restrictive than you?
Yep.
Right.
And a lot of people are going to ask, why are we comparing Blood Angels to Space Wolves so much? It's because of they're so similar as a unit, as a purpose on the field, the lore, everything is so similar between them. They're the easiest comparison to make. But you can make that same comparison with Ultramarines. You can make the same comparison with Dark Angels. You can make the same comparison with any faction that has named characters in it. They are not nearly as restrictive as Space Wolves. Period.
Correct. And
so,
it's one of the things to point out is the way Death Company for Blood Angels was worded as far as getting OC. It was like chaplains within 12, right?
Yes.
We Space Wolves getting Wolfen gained the rule that nope, chaplains within 12. I mean, wolf priests, because we're not allowed to take chaplains. It's fine. Wolf priests within 12. Again, additional restriction for no reason. Or any character within 6. Again, we're interacting with OC. If a character is close enough, you gain OC. This is identical to Death Company. And then we had something that was slightly different than Death Company. Arguably, you could make an argument it was better. I still think it's worse because it's like wolf priest, not chaplain. That feels bad. But even if you argue ours was better because any Space Wolf character within 6 would do a thing, right? Well, you know what? FAQ'd immediately after.
Immediately, we got the exact same rule.
Now Blood Angels say no, but any Blood Angels character within 6 also counts. And you know what's crazy about this? It sounds like it's just as restrictive, right? It has to be a Blood Angels character. Well, there's only a couple of characters that are Blood Angels. But what really happens is you take a Blood Angels unit of Sanguinary Guard, and then you put a generic captain that's not a Blood Angels character into the unit. And now we get to have a whole nother argument of, but that unit is a character unit and is a Blood Angels unit. So is he a Blood Angels character? I mean, the unit is a Blood Angels character unit, right? So now I admit it needs a bit of an FAQ, or your TO needs to kind of make a ruling on this.
Yeah.
I think it's somewhat clear, but this still at least opens up an argument, right? Of no, but it could be even less restrictive depending on how it's ruled than it appears.
Yeah. Now, granted, the easy answer is going to be the captain does not have the keyword Blood Angel, so no, it doesn't work.
Correct. And I think that's how it should be ruled.
Yep.
Or at least until an FAQ comes out clarifying.
Yep.
But again, this argument could exist because with the new mission deck now, some of the secondaries now see the character unit as a whole being one unit instead of 2 separate. So there's more of this that creates the potential for this argument.
Yep.
But whether the potential is realized in an FAQ or whether or not we're reaching for straws, we know what they mean. It doesn't matter. In both scenarios, still less restrictive than the whole entire codex for Space Wolves.
Yep.
Crazy.
So the last thing I want to talk about, because we're running short on time, is another thing that this comment also. So first off, thank you for your YouTube comment. Please keep them coming because it provokes discussions like this, and we love these. It gets us more involved in the community. It gets you the answers you're looking for, and it also provokes some real thought, processes for how to play the game better and what we're actually looking at. So thank you for your comment. But also it led to a different discussion inadvertently because we were talking so heavily on the comparison with Blood Angels. I actually got to make a point on something. Reddit has been, since the point updates and the new changes have come out. Reddit.
I don't even know what we're talking about yet.
Here we go again.
So the one thing I will defend my brothers of blood on Reddit. All right. The Blood Angels are usually really, really reasonable when it comes on Reddit, right? They don't complain a lot. They say, thanks for not hurting us so bad. Like, I will say the Blood Angels Reddit, really good Reddit community. The thing I said multiple times in shop when we got these point changes was all a flurry all over Reddit recently. Blood Angels players are saying the same thing. Thanks for the points change, I guess. Like, it didn't really matter. And the reason they're saying that is because when we first got our codex came out, everybody was absolutely over themselves with like, oh my God, Dante needs to be more expensive. Oh my God, Mephisto needs to be, these guys are crazy. These guys need to be more expensive. The Death Company Dreadnought needs to be more expensive. I remember bringing it in, talking directly to you, Chris, and you said, nah, actually, I don't think these points are unreasonable. I think it's completely fine. I said, I agree. Not 3 weeks after we got our codex, our points were immediately changed and everything went up. And it's like, okay, it went up enough to make me feel bad, I guess, but not awful. I guess I can deal with this. Here we are now. The win rate for Blood Angels is at 41%. And this is unacceptable to GW standards.
That's relative. We'll talk about that in a second, but that is relative.
Yep, it's relative. But GW said, okay, well, clearly we need some changes because the Blood Angels are not doing well. They went and adjusted our points by exactly what they upped them by. Almost, on every unit except the Death Company Dreadnought. The only one who actually arguably got an actual points adjustment was the Death Company Dreadnought, and he went to the same point value as the Brutalis. And you know what? I didn't hate that.
Yep. You're right. So if we look long term, the argument is none of these points adjustments were necessary because look, they're back down to exactly what they were on Codex release.
Yep.
Why are we jumping around all these points and making it difficult for players?
Yep.
Furthermore, there is several things to discuss here. So obviously they made a bunch of changes to Death Company, and the argument is Death Company is being played a lot. Okay. Yep.
And I will say before I forget, Death Company did get points drop as well. So I forgot about them because I don't use them. But yes, Death Company did get a points adjustment too.
Right. And the argument here is the reason the win rates are so low is because of how often Death Company are played. And Death Company do need some help. They're very on theme. They're very cool. No complaints, right?
Yep.
But they are kind of too expensive. One of the things that I explained to Aaron when he was trying to get more competitive and he had this new codex is if you do a more direct comparison, jump pack intercessors for their damage output per point are basically objectively better than Death Company in every way. You can argue that they're not as efficient when it comes to durability because of that 6-up feeling of pain and things like that. But we're talking about such a minor difference because they're more expensive that the durability is not worth the points because they're objectively more expensive. When you consider that despite all of these extra special weapons and things like that, that their damage output is almost identical, if not arguably better for jump pack intercessors because of the amount of mortal wounds to things that they're not actually intended to fight. So it's really hard to say that the Blood Angels are in like a bad position. I would argue somewhat seeing from your play, right? Because like we've put in some practice and we've like had some real competitive discussions about like, if we put aside our personal feelings, what is it? They're like the real good answer here. Blood Angels before these points drops were still very playable. Okay. The win rate for Blood Angels players who are putting aside some theme, putting aside some like personal, like, I don't know what to call it, opinions, I guess.
Yep.
And are like, but I'm a Blood Angels player. I want to play Blood Angels. How do I make them just as competitive as Ultramarines? I would argue you were keeping up. You weren't as good as Ultramarines because they're the favorite child. But you were keeping up with them. No questions asked.
Oh
yeah. You were making smart plays. You were struggling a bit, and then, figuring out why am I struggling?
Yep.
And then making smarter choices. And you were doing just fine. Your win rate wasn't a problem. It didn't matter when the new detachment for Custodes came out and Custodes were on top. You were keeping up. You were struggling because they were on top, right? But you were still figuring it out. And by the time that you got past the shiny new detachment and past because this is my main argument for why points are more reasonable to me than most people, whether it's deck detachment, whether it's points adjustments. Every time something new comes out, if they make a change within the first 2 weeks, and most of these changes are based upon Reddit's opinions, which happen within the first 2 days.
Yep.
That is not enough time to be able to get enough playtesting in to validate those claims.
And that exactly it proves my point of what I was trying to get at when they just adjusted 90% of the points adjustments that we got during this newest update was just back to the old stuff. It was because a bunch of people on Reddit were complaining that the named Blood Angels characters were just too good for their points cost. I guess sure. If you want to try to argue that, but also they're brand new characters with brand new abilities. You haven't fought against them yet. So yeah, on paper, it looks really good, but do you know how many times I've lost Mephiston off the table?
Yeah. And it goes both ways though, right? Because when we're saying Mephiston's crazy, he has to go up in points. You know what? That might be fair. But also, if we look at it from my perspective as the non-Blood Angels player, well, I underestimated him. So I made bad choices. And you think he's absolutely crazy, right? But now that I know the bad choices I made, the very next game we play, I'm going to counter him better. And he's going to look more reasonable.
And that's exactly what happened. It's the same thing that I've seen across Reddit. When everybody asks the opinion of, and this will wrap up our conversation nicely on this, but everybody asks the same opinion on Reddit. Every time I see a list build, I'm like, I'm building a new list. What do you guys think? It's always the same question. Who goes in my list, Mephiston or the Sanguinor? I said, I'd argue both. And you know how many times I get Redditors going, that's stupid. That's a waste of points. Okay, but I run both.
You're right. And you know what's really funny? I'm not saying, okay, let's start by humbling ourselves a bit here, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Both of us acknowledge you are not the best Blood Angels player. There are things you still have to learn. There are still little, again, I'll call them opinions that you are stuck on because you think they're cool or you already own the models and I can't afford to buy, a new list every week, right? There's these restrictions that we put on ourselves. Right? Don't fight me on suppressors again. I swear to God. But
I've got 2 units.
But as much as we have these little restrictions we put on ourselves, you know what's really, and I'm not saying this is the answer, right? But one of the factors that I think is really funny that makes your win ratio so much higher than the claimed average Blood Angels player is when you reduce your list and don't take both Sanguinor and Mephiston, which one ends up making the cut in your list?
The Sanguinor.
Right? And that's not what the internet says. It says, no, you shouldn't take Sanguinor. You should always take Mephiston. If you don't know what to do, I guess also take Sanguinor. But they are advocating Mephiston all the time. And the reason for this is because it's easier for I'm going to say more casual player. And this is not meant to be offensive. It's just your average player is more casual than they think they are, right?
Yep.
The more casual player can compare Mephiston to a lone op lieutenant so easily and so directly that it's very easy to prove and justify, look how good Mephiston is. We need to take Mephiston. He is objectively better than a lone op lieutenant in this way, this way, and this way. Why aren't we playing him? If you look at Sanguinor, what do you have to compare him to? What does a similar job in a similar way?
There is arguably nothing.
Correct.
There are some models that have close to abilities, and I do mean close to I in Illinois and close to Florida. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
They're similar.
No, again, you can have things that are good in melee. You can have characters that are willing to run around by themselves. You can have a character with lone op that's good at melee. But it turns out none of these, I would argue, are that comparable, because what is the one thing that makes the Sanguinor?
I can appear directly into combat after a charge.
Correct. You get to show up in a combat and save a unit.
Yep.
Even if he absolutely dies when he does it, what does he actually do? If you position him correctly, you can force your opponent to pile in certain ways, reducing the total number of models attacking, reducing the number of models attacking at the unit you're trying to save.
And that has happened every single time I have used him. Every single time.
Correct. But that was a skill you had to learn, right? That is not on the data sheet of when you show up, you need to be on the opposite side of the unit they charged, and you need to barely be within an inch because you're not obligated to base here. And like, there's a whole bunch of little stuff that after you learn that, no points changes. He is incredibly better than normal. For a while, you were absolutely like putting him into like, Dreadnought charged me and I want to save that unit, so I'm going to try to get some damage on the Dreadnought. Like you were doing that at first, and we had to like break that habit. And now that you are making better choices as to what unit do I intervene in, and what, like, the fact that I have fights first, is it valuable to but I have multiple fights first as Blood Angels. The Sanguinor came in. I still don't fight with him first because it's okay if he dies. It's not okay if this other unit dies, right? Like, it's all these little things that are skill based, not point based, not data sheet based. They are skill based that change drastically whether or not he is worth 50 points or 150 points.
Yep. Well, and that's why him being 140 points and everybody goes, it's too expensive. I disagree. I disagree. I think he's either perfectly pointed, or might even be an argument of he needs to go up by 10, especially if you know how to use him. But the problem is they base the points, and this wraps up the conversation nicely. They base the points when they create these models, and they say this is how much it costs. They do not base it on the competitive player. They don't base it on the player who does story mode. You know, like they just want to have a good time with their friends. They base it right down the middle. How will this be used competitively? Also, how will this be used as a hobby play? Right down the middle. Because of that, that's where, and this is good, this is why we have so many point changes, because they base it on your average player, and then certain units the competitive player gets to wield like a scalpel. And they're like, you know what? We cannot point this based on the average player, because look what the competitive player is doing to the average player. We got to up his points. And that's fair. There's nothing wrong with that. And then the opposite happens too, right? Like, they base it on the average player, and then the competitive player says, nope, you overpointed him because the average player is like overusing him, like Death Company or whatever else. And we're not going to play him competitively. And then, okay, so we got to reduce his points, because while the average player in a Crusade game or whatever else is having no problems with them, they're being so undertaken because a competitive player sees them as not good enough. We got to reduce their points. And again, between all of this, we end up finding a happy medium over time, and we're all happy about that. Yep. But the reality is, like, when does that correct or happy medium number show up? Yep. Because again, your codex comes out and they up all the points because the internet says he's too good. Well, he's too good for casual play maybe, but competitive play, he's just fine. And then over time, the competitive players say, no, they upped his points cost. He's way too expensive. And then they stop using him. And now they have to reduce the points because he's not being taken. Like, this is why, again, I want to cap all this by saying, anytime the internet says something should go up or down, I don't care if they're right or not. I am not going to listen to them until after I've gotten some real play in with them and then confirmed that for myself. Yep. So when the guy on Reddit who played one game with
like Blood Angels after it came out and said, man, Mephiston did so much work. He's absolutely nuts. We have to up his points. You know, most of the problem with these Redditors is that they're not giving their credentials, right? They're not saying, I played one game and he's nuts. You're right. I totally agree. He needs to go up in points. Whereas the other guy who's like, nah, he's all right. They're ignoring him because there's 6 guys who got one game in, all agreeing on something. And the one guy who said he's fine is like, no, but it turns out I've gotten like 7 games in. And after 7 games, yes, I saw the games where he's crazy, but I also saw the games where my opponent countered him correctly because I played the same guy for a 3rd time. And then he absolutely like dealt with the problem.
Yep. No, and It's like the whole shebang. Why are we talking about all these points? Why are we talking about all this? How do we even get from Space Wolves to this? The answer is it all rotates back to patience. When new things come out, we as a community need to have more patience and be willing to practice into these things more. This is why, and we've already said, I'm not the greatest Blood Angels player out there, right? I have a ton to learn. And there's an argument to be made. I'm fighting into a local meta with most of my battles, right? But even then, a lot of the people I'm fighting on a regular basis are a part of our team. I'm constantly practicing. I'm constantly punching up. I'm constantly trying to get better as a player. And there are times where I run into new things. I don't immediately say that's broken, it needs to go up in points. I say, okay, I need to fight that thing again to figure out how it works. And if I figure out how it works and it still beats me, okay, maybe now there's an argument to it's a little too undercosted.
And the number of games is not just enough, right? Like I keep saying number of games, but you made a good point here of like, no, you were constantly punching up, right? You were finding some of the toughest players we have in our area and you were actively going after them. How many people on Reddit that are saying, you know, oh, he needs to go up in points or, oh, this guy's trash, needs to go down in points. How many of those people are playing against players that are better than them?
Yep.
Like if I played a game against a guy who's been playing 40K for like maybe 2 months at most, you're right. It's going to look like I can absolutely like run through them. My points are way too cheap, but I take the same list against the other guy who's playing, you know, Custodes for the last 6 months. Ups and downs doesn't matter. He knows him in and out. Well, now I play against that guy and man, I feel like I'm too expensive. And that's me as a good player, right?
Yeah.
Like, again, how many Redditors are just like, no, I played like 3 games. That's enough. I figured it out. Well, yeah, but all 3 games were against people who were casuals. Like, did you punch up for any of those? But they, again, the internet, they are putting it on Reddit and they are getting arguably the same weight as the guy who, but I put in 7 games and every game I was punching up. And it doesn't matter that I lost all 7 games because I found the best guy to fight against that I could. I still recognize he was terrified of this unit. You're right. That should probably go up in points. Or I played against the best guy. And after the first game, when he realized what it did, he countered it every other game after that. It's just fine. He's not scared of it at all.
Yep.
And he's better than me. He knows what's scary.
Yep. I will leave it on this. Okay, I'm gonna leave our listeners with some words of wisdom from Chris. Okay, I know you're gonna love this.
I've got none of that.
So back when I first started playing about a year ago, Chris repeatedly told me, "Okay, I understand why you want to take that unit. Thematically, it fits, but also you're telling me you want to be more competitive. It doesn't work." I heard this many a times. But I also heard him say, if you want it to work, we can make it work. The answer here is everybody. So our percentage rate, right? Again, I will caveat this saying I am not the best Blood Angels player out there. Do not take it as this. Okay. But our Blood Angels percentage rate is 41%. And my average win rate is 80%. There's something to be said for the average Blood Angels player is trying to play in a competitive scene, seemingly, okay, They're trying to play in a competitive scene with a thematic style army. And you can't do that. If you're trying to be competitive, you have to play the units that you're like, Because the prime example is I was using a ton of Death Company where I first started. I'm using not a single Death Company model now. Because after our talk of, I want to use Death Company, and you said, okay, but the jump packs are better. And this is why. I immediately started running 2 JPI units. And immediately my win percentage went up significantly. You told me that I need to take the Sanguinor more often. I had the model. I rarely took them. And then you started to teach me how to use it better. Since then, he's in every single list I make, no matter what. He is an automatic take for me.
Even in your doubles.
Even in my doubles list. And I took a ton of tanks and one infantry-based unit, which was the Sanguinor. And he changed the game almost every time. Because I made these more conscientious, competitive choices, because I refused to hold myself back to this standard that I set, this unachievable standard of, well, I like the Death Company, but I don't want to take anything to actually boost the Death Company's usability. Because I said, all right, well, I'm taking mostly everything else, and I listened to what you had to say, my win percentages went up. My win rate went up. My actual understanding of the game went up. I was able to learn better strategy. But that didn't mean you wouldn't have allowed me to play Death Company. Instead, if I wanted to play Death Company, it would have been, then let's build a Death Company oriented list.
Correct. And this is one of the things that I use as a great example. One of the guys on the team, it was like 2 years ago now. 2 years ago, a guy came in and he decided, hey, I'm getting into 40K. And within 2 months of him playing, I think it was, I'm ballparking numbers here, I could be wrong, but within like 2 months, he was really interested. He was really trying to learn. He was being kind of analytical about things. And I was like, hey, do you want to, join the team and be competitive? You got a good positive attitude. And he said, yeah, absolutely. I'd love to be competitive. Well, within a year of him starting playing 40K at all, at the time he was playing guard, he went to Adepticon and he cleaned up. Like, he didn't win the thing outright, but also his first GT ever, his first like major event ever, his first again, he's been playing for less than a year and he almost made day 2. First off, that's nuts, right? Yep. But then going to what you said just a second ago, did he play nope, the internet says this is the best and this is the option and we do this thing? Absolutely not. He said, I love horses. Right? He's playing guard and he's like, I love horses. I want to play horsey guys. And at the time, remember, this is before the codex. They were on index. There was no Death Rider horses, none of that stuff. So at the time, basically, no one was playing horses.
Yep.
Literally, of all the guard players at Adepticon for that singles event, he was one of, I think, 2 guys we looked up that had horses, and the other guy was playing a single 5-man as a quick action monkey unit. He spammed them, and we helped him understand how to position them, when to extend, when to play, KG. And he ended up doing amazing because he said, I love this theme. I want to make it work. I'm willing to put in the extra effort to utilize this in the best way possible, despite the restriction I'm putting on myself.
Yep. And
that was enough to get him where he needed to go. So
and he did it again with crew.
Right.
He did it again with, now he's playing Death Watch.
Yep.
He does it every single time. He comes to you and goes, I want to play the weird, wacky thing. And you go, I'm here for it. And you guys always build some sort of list together that always just blows things out of the water.
You're right. Which is part of why I'm saying most of these point changes need to be kind of slept on a little bit and need to take more time, because I don't care if we're talking Sanguinor. I don't care if we're talking point changes on Death Company. Yep. All of this is, I would argue, a secondary factor to what actually makes a difference. The primary factor in making a difference is the player.
Yep.
We keep talking about you like punching up and stuff like that. You have an 80% win rate. And I'm not saying you're the best Blood Angels player, but according to that number, you are, right? But
yeah, which is crazy.
Right. But the reality is, if we take a look at that, it's how many of the auto wins and how many of the auto losses were like, no, but my list is a bad matchup to that. The answer is next to none. Yep. You know the difference between you winning and losing? Most of the time, if it was one of the 20% you lost, it was you were for sure punching up. You went and fought, Tyler, you went and fought Mitch, and you like, no, but they're definitely good players.
Yep.
And of that 80% you were winning, at least half of that was like, I was helping teach somebody some mechanics.
Exactly.
I was helping, like somebody was punching up into me.
Yep.
If we made it to where you fought the same number of games that were punching up versus the same number of games people were punching up to you, you would probably go down to like a 50% win rate.
Yep, absolutely.
The player and their knowledge is more important than any number of points. Do the points dictate what we play? Do the points dictate, how easy it is and how much effort we have to put in to win? Yes. But the player is more important than any individual points.
We're going to be, to tie all this up nicely, we're going to be here soon, moving to our new location. If not, at the time of this release, we're already there. But I am going to make Chris a challenge. I'm going to challenge you to build me a Death Company list, okay? That you argue would be a good competitive list. And we'll play it on stream. We'll do it on stream. And we'll show people that you can play whatever you want. It's just the player. It really comes down to 90% of the player is what matters. And what do you think?
Again, the biggest factor here is the player, because I'm going to build that list and I'm going to tell you right now, I don't care if I play it. I don't care if you play it. The first time that list is played, it's going to lose. Why? Yep. Because both players are like, I haven't quite I don't feel comfortable with the dice rolls for this. I haven't quite figured out if this is a good matchup.
Yep.
But after you play that list 3-4 times, by the time you play like that fifth game, you're going to be like, you know what? I feel comfortable with their damage output. I feel comfortable with their durability. I know when to extend. I know when not to extend. And then it's going to look just as good or similar, at least, to your current list, which is doing very well.
Yep. And that's what we'll do. We'll fight it. We'll build it. We'll fight it once. And then a couple months later, we'll bring it back on to stream after I've had some time to practice with it, or you've had some time to practice with it. We'll show everybody that it exactly comes down to the player itself, just to put some evidence on our claims here. I think that's a good idea.
We'll add that to the list.
We'll add it to the list. Anyway, is there anything else you want to talk about? We went on forever on these topics, but I think there were topics we absolutely needed to discuss. So is there anything else you want to throw in?
Nope. I think it's good. There's we could keep talking about this for hours, and that's why we do an episode like every week, because there is no end to the amount of information we could cover.
Yep.
But I think we're good.
All right. Well, on that note, this brings us to the end of the episode. So thank you for listening. Tune in next week.
Hey, everybody. It's Aaron. I want to thank you again for tuning in for this episode of Gopher's Workshop with us, hanging out and listening. Remember, leave a 5-star review. Let us know what you think. And if you feel like supporting us, you can always go to Patreon in the show notes below. Thanks. Till next time.